In the vastness of space, far beyond what any human eye could see, a fleet of ships moved silently through the darkness. These ships were not like anything humans had ever built. They shimmered with an eerie glow, their surfaces shifting as if alive. At the head of this armada was Zorath, the ruler of the Rexian Empire, a being who had spent centuries conquering worlds and expanding his dominion across galaxies. His latest target was Earth, a small blue planet that floated peacefully in, a quiet corner of the universe. To Zorath, it was nothing more than another resource to exploit, another civilization to crush under his heel. On Earth, life went on as usual. In Chicago, Daniel Carter sat at his desk in a cramped office, typing lines of code into his computer. He was a software engineer by trade, but also a tinkerer at heart. When he wasn't working on projects for his company, he spent hours tinkering, with gadgets and programs just for fun. Today, however, his mind wandered. Something felt off, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Outside his window, the city buzzed with its usual energy, cars honking, people rushing to catch buses or trains. Yet beneath all that noise, there seemed to be a strange stillness, as if the world were holding its breath. Far away in San Diego, Laura Bennett stood ankle-deep in the ocean, her notebook clutched tightly in one hand. She was a marine biologist, someone who spent most of her days studying creatures that lived beneath the waves. Lately, though, she had noticed something unusual about the behavior of certain species. Dolphins, which were normally playful and curious, had become skittish and aggressive. Fish schools scattered without reason, moving erratically even when no predators were near. It was almost as if they sensed something coming, something big enough to shake the very fabric of their world. Laura scribbled notes, furiously, trying to make sense of what she saw. Meanwhile, deep within a top-secret military base hidden in the Nevada desert, Colonel Ethan Hayes stared at a screen filled with incomprehensible data. The readings had started. Appearing a few weeks ago, faint signals detected by satellites orbiting Earth. At first, everyone thought it was interference from solar flares or some malfunction in the equipment. But now, those signals were growing stronger, clearer, and impossible to ignore. Whatever was causing them was getting closer. Beside him stood Dr. Rachel Monroe, a brilliant astrophysicist who specialized in decoding patterns in cosmic radiation. Her brow furrowed as she analyzed the numbers scrolling across the monitor. "What do you think?" Hayes asked, his voice low and steady. He trusted Monroe's judgment implicitly, but even she looked troubled. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "It's not natural, that much I can tell you. These patterns don't match anything we've seen before." Before either of them could say more, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed overhead, casting long shadows across the room. Technicians scrambled to their stations, shouting updates over the chaos. On one of the main screens, a grainy image appeared, a cluster of objects moving rapidly toward Earth. They were too far away to identify clearly, but their sheer size left little doubt about their origin. This was no asteroid or comet. This was something else entirely. Back in Chicago, Daniel barely noticed the commotion at first. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from social media apps, but he ignored them, focusing instead on debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code. Then someone shouted outside his building, and he looked up instinctively. Through the glass, he saw people pointing skyward, their faces pale with shock. Slowly, he rose from his chair and stepped closer to the window. That's when he saw it. A massive object hovering above the city, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. For a moment, he thought it might be some kind of experimental aircraft, but then it moved, gliding effortlessly through the air without making a sound. His heart raced as he grabbed his phone and began recording. Laura saw it too, though her view was different. From where she stood on the beach, the object looked like a dark blot against the bright blue sky. Birds scattered in panic, their cries echoing eerily as the thing descended lower. People screamed, running for cover as smaller craft detached from the main vessel and spread out across the horizon. Laura froze, her notebook slipping from her fingers and landing softly in the sand. She wanted to run, to hide, but something held her rooted to the spot. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was fear. She couldn't decide. By nightfall, the entire planet knew something was wrong. News outlets broadcast footage of the alien ships appearing over major cities worldwide. Governments issued statements, urging calm, but no one listened. Panic spread faster than anyone could contain it. Stores were looted, roads clogged with fleeing families, and emergency services overwhelmed. In the midst of the chaos, Daniel's video went viral. Millions watched as he captured the ship floating above Chicago, its movements smooth and deliberate. Comment sections exploded with theories ranging from government conspiracies to religious prophecies. Some praised him for sharing the footage, others accused him of faking it. None of it mattered to Daniel. He just wanted answers. At the Nevada base, things were no less frantic. Hayes ordered every available soldier to prepare for deployment, while Monroe worked tirelessly to decode the signals emanating from the alien vessels. Hours turned into days as they pieced together fragments of information. Finally, Monroe made a breakthrough. The aliens weren't just observing. They were communicating. Their messages were encoded in quantum pulses transmitted through Earth's electromagnetic field. If humanity could crack the code, they might stand a chance of understanding their intentions. But time was running out. Smaller scout ships continued to descend, probing defenses and gathering intelligence. Each encounter left destruction in its wake. Buildings crumbled, vehicles burned, and lives were lost. Despite the mounting casualties, Hayes refused to give up. He assembled a team comprising Monroe, Daniel, whose technical skills proved invaluable, and Laura, who offered insights into how the aliens might interact with Earth's ecosystems. Together, they devised a plan to intercept one of the scout ships and retrieve critical data. As preparations unfolded, tension gripped the group. They argued over strategies, debated risks, and questioned whether their efforts would even matter. But beneath the disagreements lay a shared determination to protect their home no matter the cost. Daniel often found himself marveling at how ordinary people like him and Laura had been thrust into such extraordinary circumstances. Laura, for her part, struggled to reconcile her scientific training with the surreal reality unfolding around her. And Monroe? She remained focused, driven by the belief that knowledge was humanity's greatest weapon. The day of the operation arrived sooner than anyone expected. Hayes led the mission personally, guiding a squadron of fighter jets toward a scout ship, hovering over Los Angeles. The aliens responded immediately, deploying defensive drones that darted through the air like angry insects. Explosions lit up the sky as missiles struck both sides, sending shockwaves rippling through the atmosphere. Amidst the chaos, Hayes managed to disable the scout ship's propulsion system, forcing it to crash land in a remote area. The victory was short-lived, however, as the downed vessel emitted a high-pitched whine before self-destructing, leaving behind only fragments of debris. Though the mission failed to yield usable data, it provided valuable lessons. Humanity couldn't rely solely on brute force. It needed innovation, strategy, and perhaps a touch of luck. Back at the base, the team regrouped, determined to find another way. As they pored over recovered wreckage and analyzed intercepted signals, one thing became clear. The aliens viewed Earth as little more than prey. To them, resistance was futile, surrender inevitable. But humanity had always thrived on defiance, on refusing to back down even when faced with overwhelming odds. And so, as the alien fleet drew nearer, the stage was set for a battle unlike any other, a fight not just for survival, but for the very soul of a planet. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The alien presence loomed over every corner of the planet, a constant reminder that humanity was no longer alone. In Chicago, Daniel Carter found himself unable to sleep. The image of the massive ship hovering above his city replayed in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't escape. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends and family asking if he was safe, but he barely responded. Instead, he spent hours staring at the footage he had recorded, zooming in on details and trying to make sense of what he saw. The ship's surface shimmered as though it were alive, shifting colors and patterns in a way that defied logic. It wasn't just a machine. It felt like something more, something alien in the truest sense of the word. Laura Bennett returned to her small apartment in San Diego after days of field work along the coast. She collapsed onto her couch, exhausted, but unable to relax. Her notebook lay open on the coffee table, filled with frantic scribbles about the strange behavior of marine life before the aliens arrived. Dolphins fleeing en masse, fish schools scattering without reason, even plankton behaving erratically. It was as if the ocean itself knew something was coming long before humans did. Laura stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. What did it mean? Was there some kind of connection between Earth's ecosystems and these invaders? If so, could understanding that connection give humanity an edge? At the Nevada base, Dr. Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly alongside Colonel Ethan Hayes. The two rarely left the facility, surviving on caffeine and adrenaline, as they pieced together fragments of information about the Vrexian fleet. Monroe focused on decoding the quantum signals emitted by the alien ships. These signals pulsed through Earth's electromagnetic field like ripples in water, carrying encrypted messages that seemed to stretch beyond human comprehension. Hayes watched her work, impressed by her dedication but worried about how little progress they were making. Time was slipping away, and every second brought the main invasion force closer to Earth. One evening, as the team gathered in the command center, Monroe finally made a breakthrough. She called everyone to attention, her voice steady despite the fatigue etched into her face. On the large screen behind her, lines of code scrolled rapidly, translating the alien signals into something resembling language. "They're communicating," she announced. "Not just among themselves, but with us too. They've been sending warnings." "What kind of warnings?" Hayes asked, leaning forward in his chair. Monroe hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's not clear yet, but it seems like they're demanding surrender. They want us to submit without resistance." A heavy silence fell over the room. Surrender wasn't an option anyone wanted to consider, but the scale of the threat was undeniable. The Vrexian fleet dwarfed anything humanity had ever faced, their technology far superior to anything on Earth. Still, Hayes shook his head firmly. "We won't roll over," he said. "If we can decode their signals fully, maybe we can find a way to respond, to negotiate." Daniel and Laura listened intently, absorbing every word. Though neither of them had military or scientific training, they understood the stakes. Humanity's survival depended on finding answers quickly. Over the next few days, the team worked around the clock to refine Monroe's translation algorithms. Daniel contributed by writing scripts to automate parts of the process, his programming skills proving invaluable. Laura offered insights based on her observations of animal behavior, suggesting that certain patterns in the signals might mimic natural phenomena like waves or wind currents. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. As the team labored in secrecy, the rest of the world struggled to cope with the growing crisis. Governments issued conflicting statements, some calling for unity, while others urged citizens to prepare for the worst. Panic spread faster than any official message, fueled by rumors and misinformation. People stockpiled food and supplies, emptied bank accounts, and fled cities in search of safety. The global economy teetered on the brink of collapse, and social order started to unravel. Yet amidst the chaos, acts of courage and kindness emerged. Neighbors helped each other fortify homes, strangers shared resources, and communities banded together to protect the vulnerable. It was a fragile hope, but it kept many going. Then came the moment everyone dreaded. One afternoon, the skies darkened as dozens of scout ships descended simultaneously across multiple continents. Their movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if they were staging a grand display of power. Cities froze in terror as holographic projections appeared, towering figures of Zorath himself addressing humanity. His voice boomed across languages and cultures, translated seamlessly by some unknown mechanism embedded in the transmissions. "You are weak," he declared. "Your resistance is futile. Submit now, and your annihilation will be swift. Resist, and you will perish slowly." The message repeated endlessly, hammering home the inevitability of defeat. Many people broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the sheer arrogance of the alien ruler. Others clenched their fists in defiance, vowing to fight until their last breath. At the Nevada base, the team watched grimly as Zorath's ultimatum played out on screens. Hayes slammed his fist against the table, his frustration boiling over. "He thinks we'll just lie down and die," he growled. "Well, he's wrong." Monroe nodded, her expression resolute. "We need to show him we're not defenseless," she said. "If we can disrupt their communication network, we might buy ourselves enough time to develop a real counterattack." Her suggestion sparked a flurry of activity. Daniel worked with technicians to modify existing satellites. turning them into signal jammers capable of interfering with the aliens' quantum pulses. Laura collaborated with biologists and ecologists to analyze how Earth's natural systems interacted with the invaders' technology, hoping to uncover vulnerabilities. Hayes coordinated with military units around the globe, preparing for a coordinated strike against key targets within the alien fleet. Days turned into weeks as the team pushed themselves to their limits. Exhaustion became a constant companion, but no one complained. Every setback was met with renewed determination. Every failure analyzed and corrected. Finally, everything was ready. Hayes briefed the team one last time, his tone firm but tinged with emotion. "This is it," he said. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you all to know you've done something incredible. You've given humanity a fighting chance." Operation launched at dawn. Fighter jets roared into the sky, accompanied by drones armed with experimental weapons designed by Monroe's team. The goal was simple: disable as many scout ships as possible and gather data on their weaknesses. As the battle unfolded, explosions lit up the horizon, shaking the ground below. The aliens fought back fiercely, deploying advanced weaponry that reduced entire squadrons to ash in seconds. Despite the losses, Hayes pressed on, leading his forces deeper into enemy territory. Back at the base, Daniel and Laura monitored the operation remotely, their hearts pounding as updates streamed in. The initial assault succeeded in crippling several scout ships, forcing them to crash land in remote areas. Recovery teams moved in quickly, retrieving debris and scanning for usable intel. But just as hope began to rise, disaster struck. A massive alien vessel appeared on the edge of Earth's atmosphere, its size dwarfing everything else in the sky. It unleashed a devastating barrage of energy beams, obliterating entire fleets in moments. Hayes ordered a retreat, knowing they couldn't win this round. When the survivors returned to the base, morale was low but not broken. The operation had failed to achieve its primary objective, but it provided valuable lessons. Humanity now knew the aliens' strengths, and perhaps, more importantly, their weaknesses. Analyzing the recovered debris revealed flaws in the Vrexian ship's armor, tiny gaps where their defenses faltered. Monroe theorized that targeting these weak points could disable larger vessels, buying precious time for Earth to mount a proper defense. As the team regrouped, tensions ran high. Arguments erupted over strategy, blame shifted back and forth, but beneath it all lay a shared resolve. They couldn't afford to give up, not when billions of lives depended on their success. Daniel often found himself marveling at how ordinary people like him and Laura had become part of something so extraordinary. Laura, for her part, drew strength from the knowledge that she was contributing in a meaningful way, even if her role seemed small compared to others. And Monroe. She remained steadfast, driven by the belief that science held the key to humanity's survival. The aliens may have underestimated Earth, but they hadn't accounted for its greatest asset, the resilience of its people. With each passing day, the resistance grew stronger, fueled by desperation and determination. The stage was set for humanity's next move, a gambit that would test the limits of ingenuity and bravery. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The fight was far from over. The resistance had grown stronger, but so had the stakes. Every day brought new challenges as humanity fought to survive against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. In Chicago, Daniel Carter spent most of his time hunched over a laptop, his eyes glued to lines of code scrolling across the screen. His hands moved quickly over the keyboard, tweaking algorithms and testing new ideas. The alien communication signals were complex, almost impenetrable. But Daniel refused to give up. He knew that decoding them could be the key to disrupting the invaders' network. Laura Bennett often joined him in the makeshift lab at the Nevada base, her mind racing with possibilities. Together they worked tirelessly, their focus unwavering despite the chaos around them. At the same time, Dr. Rachel Monroe continued her research on the recovered alien debris. She pored over every fragment, examining materials and circuits that defied human understanding. Her goal was simple: find weaknesses in the Vrexian technology. What she discovered shocked even her. The aliens' ships were powered by a form of energy tied directly to quantum fields, making them nearly indestructible under normal circumstances. However, Monroe noticed something unusual. The energy patterns fluctuated slightly when exposed to certain frequencies, creating tiny gaps in their defenses. If humanity could exploit these gaps, they might stand a chance. Colonel Ethan Hayes coordinated the military response, rallying soldiers and civilians alike. He knew brute force alone wouldn't win this war, but it could buy time for the scientists to develop a solution. Under his leadership, teams of engineers retrofitted fighter jets with experimental weapons designed to target the aliens' weak points. These weapons emitted bursts of electromagnetic pulses calibrated to specific frequencies identified by Monroe's team. It was a risky plan, untested and unpredictable, but it was all they had. As preparations intensified, tensions rose among the group. Arguments broke out frequently, fueled by exhaustion and frustration. Some members of the team questioned whether their efforts would make any difference. Others worried about the ethical implications of using such advanced and potentially dangerous technology. Daniel found himself caught in the middle, torn between his desire to help and his growing unease about what they were building. Laura shared his concerns but reminded him of the bigger picture. "We don't have a choice," she said one evening, as they worked late into the night. "If we don't try, billions will die." Despite the disagreements, everyone remained committed to the mission. They knew failure wasn't an option. Humanity's survival depended on finding a way to fight back, no matter how slim the chances seemed. Finally, after weeks of relentless effort, everything was ready. Hayes gathered the team for a final briefing, his expression grim but determined. "Tomorrow we strike," he announced. "Our goal is to disable as many alien ships as possible and gather more data. This isn't just about winning a battle. It's about giving Earth a fighting chance." The operation began at dawn. Fighter jets launched from bases around the world, their engines roaring as they climbed into the sky. Pilots exchanged nervous glances, knowing full well the risks involved. The alien fleet loomed above them, a wall of shimmering metal stretching farther than the eye could see. As the first wave of human aircraft approached, the invaders responded immediately. Energy beams lashed out, cutting through the air like lightning. Explosions erupted, sending shockwaves rippling through the atmosphere. Despite the losses, Hayes pushed forward, ordering his forces to focus on targeting the weak points identified by Monroe's team. Back at the base, Daniel and Laura monitored the battle remotely, their screens filled with live feeds from drones and satellites. Their hearts raced as they watched the chaos unfold. Human fighters darted through the sky, dodging enemy fire while unleashing salvos of electromagnetic pulses. For a moment, it seemed like the plan might actually work. Several alien ships faltered, their glowing surfaces flickering as if struggling to maintain cohesion. Cheers erupted in the command center as the first vessel crashed to the ground, its massive frame crumbling like glass. But the celebration was short-lived. The aliens adapted quickly, adjusting their defenses to counter the human attacks. New waves of scout ships descended, surrounding the remaining fighters and cutting off escape routes. Hayes ordered a retreat, knowing they couldn't sustain the assault any longer. As the surviving jets limped back to base, the team braced themselves for the aftermath. Though the operation had inflicted damage, it wasn't enough to turn the tide. The alien fleet still outnumbered humanity's forces by an overwhelming margin. Despite the setback, the mission provided critical insights. Analysis of the downed ship revealed additional flaws in the Vrexian design, confirming Monroe's earlier findings. More importantly, it proved that humanity could hurt the invaders if they struck precisely and strategically. Encouraged by this discovery, the team doubled down on their efforts, refining their weapons and developing new tactics. Daniel worked with programmers to improve the targeting systems, ensuring each pulse hit its mark with pinpoint accuracy. Laura collaborated with biologists to study how Earth's ecosystems reacted to the alien presence, hoping to uncover hidden advantages. Monroe focused on scaling up production of the experimental weapons, pushing factories to their limits. Meanwhile, the global situation grew increasingly dire. Cities lay in ruins, their streets deserted except for scavengers searching for scraps. Refugees crowded into makeshift camps, struggling to survive without access to food, water, or medical supplies. Governments teetered on the brink of collapse, unable to provide relief or maintain order. Yet amidst the despair, acts of courage and resilience shone brightly. Ordinary people banded together to protect their communities, sharing resources and standing guard against looters. Stories of heroism spread, offering a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Hayes understood the importance of morale. He traveled to different regions, meeting with local leaders and encouraging citizens to keep fighting. His presence inspired many, reminding them that they weren't alone in this struggle. Even those who doubted victory found strength in his unwavering determination. "We've faced impossible odds before," he told a crowd of survivors gathered in a bombed-out town square. "And every time we've risen to meet the challenge, this is no different." As the days passed, whispers began circulating about a secret project known only as Eclipse. Few details were available, but rumors suggested it involved rewriting fundamental laws of physics to erase the invaders from existence. The idea sounded far-fetched, even absurd, yet some believed it might be humanity's last hope. Hayes kept the project classified, limiting knowledge to a select few, including Monroe, Daniel, and Laura. When asked about it, he simply said, "It's our ace in the hole." The truth, however, was more complicated. Project Eclipse relied on manipulating quantum fields to destabilize the fabric of reality itself. While theoretically capable of erasing the aliens, it also carried immense risks. Testing had shown that unintended side effects could ripple outward, affecting everything from power grids to memories. Activating it might save Earth, or doom it entirely. The decision weighed heavily on everyone involved, especially Monroe, who had designed the system. She spent countless hours reviewing calculations, searching for ways to minimize the dangers. "There are no guarantees," she admitted, during a late-night meeting with Hayes. "But if we do nothing, we're finished anyway." Daniel and Laura struggled with the moral implications of using such a weapon. They understood the necessity, yet the thought of altering reality left them uneasy. What right did they have to play God? Could they live with the consequences, whatever they might be? Despite their doubts, they threw themselves into preparing for activation, knowing there was no turning back. Supplies were stockpiled, equipment tested, and contingency plans drawn up. The team rehearsed every step of the process, leaving nothing to chance. Finally, the day arrived. The alien fleet had regrouped, forming a massive armada poised to deliver the final blow. Cities braced for impact as reports poured in of incoming ships. Panic gripped the population, but Hayes remained calm, issuing orders with quiet authority. "This is it," he told the team as they took their positions. "Whatever happens next, remember why we're doing this." Monroe stood at the controls, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to activate the system. Daniel monitored the targeting parameters, ensuring precision down to the smallest detail. Laura kept watch over environmental readings, alert for any signs of instability. Outside, the sky darkened as the alien ships drew closer, blotting out the sun with their sheer numbers. The air crackled with tension, anticipation hanging thick like a storm cloud. Then, with a deep breath, Monroe flipped the switch. A low hum filled the room, growing louder until it vibrated through every surface. On the monitors, energy levels spiked, pulsing outward in concentric waves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien ships began to flicker, their forms, dissolving like mirages in the desert heat. One by one, they vanished, erased from existence as though they had never been there. Cheers erupted in the control room, tears streaming down faces as the realization sank in. They had done it. But the victory came at a cost. Across the globe, strange anomalies appeared. Power. Objet. The world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The activation of Project Eclipse had erased the alien fleet from existence, but it also left behind a trail of chaos and instability. In Chicago, Daniel Carter wandered through empty streets, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. Buildings stood abandoned, their windows shattered and doors hanging open. Power lines sagged lifelessly, and cars sat motionless on the roads, their batteries drained by the strange energy pulse that had swept across the planet. Daniel felt like a ghost walking through a city frozen in time. He clutched his phone tightly. In his hand, though its battery was long dead, the device had become a kind of talisman, a reminder of the life he once lived before everything fell apart. Laura Bennett returned to San Diego after weeks at the Nevada base, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. Her apartment was as she had left it, untouched by looters or the strange anomalies that plagued other areas. Yet something felt wrong. She noticed small details out of place, a photograph missing from her wall, a book lying open on the floor despite her certainty that she had left it closed. It wasn't just her home. The entire city seemed altered. People spoke of memories fading, of places they swore existed but could no longer find. Laura tried to convince herself it was stress, the lingering effects of trauma. But deep down, she knew better. Something fundamental had shifted. At the Nevada base, Dr. Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to understand what had happened. She pored over data logs, analyzing every second of the eclipse activation. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she reviewed the results. The system had worked exactly as intended, targeting the alien fleet with precision and erasing it from reality. But the ripple effects were far worse than anyone had anticipated. Entire sections of Earth's electromagnetic field had destabilized, causing unpredictable distortions in space and time. Objects disappeared without warning. People forgot chunks of their lives, and even geography seemed to shift in subtle ways. Monroe feared they had opened a Pandora's box, unleashing forces beyond human comprehension. Colonel Ethan Hayes struggled to maintain order amidst the growing uncertainty. Military units reported bizarre incidents, soldiers vanishing mid-step, equipment malfunctioning for no apparent reason, and entire bases becoming inaccessible due to sudden changes in terrain. Governments around the world scrambled to respond, but communication networks were unreliable, and trust between nations began to fray. Hayes traveled extensively, meeting with leaders and trying to reassure them that humanity would endure. Yet, even he couldn't ignore the signs of unraveling reality. He often found himself staring at maps, wondering if the borders they represented still held any meaning. Daniel and Laura reunited at the base, drawn together by a shared sense of responsibility. They spent hours discussing what they had witnessed, piecing together fragments of information in an attempt to make sense of it all. Daniel suggested that the anomalies might be localized, affecting certain areas more than others. Laura countered that the problem was likely global, pointing to reports of similar phenomena occurring on every continent. Both agreed that they needed answers quickly, but neither knew where to start. The weight of their failure pressed heavily on them, a constant reminder of the risks they had taken, and the price humanity was now paying. Monroe joined their discussions, bringing scientific rigor to their theories. She proposed that the eclipse system had disrupted not only the aliens, but also the underlying fabric of reality itself. By rewriting quantum fields, they had essentially torn holes in the universe, allowing elements of existence to slip away. Her explanation was met with stunned silence. "If we don't fix this," she said quietly, "it won't matter if the aliens are gone. Reality will collapse entirely." Hayes listened intently, his expression grim. "Is there a way to reverse it?" he asked finally. Monroe hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Maybe. If we can stabilize the quantum fields, we might be able to contain the damage. But it won't be easy. We'd need to recreate the conditions of the original activation and then counteract them with an opposing wave." The team set to work immediately, pooling their knowledge and resources. Daniel wrote new algorithms to simulate the effects of the eclipse pulse, testing thousands of scenarios in search of a solution. Laura contributed insights from her observations of natural systems, suggesting that Earth's ecosystems might hold clues to restoring balance. Monroe focused on designing a device capable of generating the necessary counterwave, pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion. Hayes coordinated logistics, ensuring they had everything they needed to proceed. As days turned into weeks, progress remained slow and uncertain. Each attempt to stabilize the fields resulted in further distortions, sometimes worsening the situation. Supplies dwindled and morale plummeted. Arguments broke out among the team, frustration boiling over as failures mounted. Daniel snapped at Laura during one heated exchange, accusing her of clinging to unproven theories. Laura fired back, questioning whether his simulations were accurate enough to trust. Monroe stepped in, her voice firm but calm. "We're running out of time," she reminded them. "If we keep turning on each other, we'll lose everything." Her words struck a chord. Slowly, tensions eased, replaced by a renewed determination to succeed. The team redoubled their efforts, working late into the night and sharing meals in silence. Despite their differences, they shared a common goal: to repair the damage they had caused and give humanity a chance to rebuild. Hayes watched them with quiet admiration, knowing their perseverance was humanity's greatest strength. Finally, after countless sleepless nights, they had a breakthrough. Monroe identified a specific frequency that seemed to resonate with the destabilized fields, creating a temporary patch. Daniel refined the calculations, ensuring the frequency aligned perfectly with the affected areas. Laura tested the theory using environmental data, confirming its potential effectiveness. With a plan in place, they prepared for the final step: deploying the counterwave on a global scale. The operation required coordination across continents, a monumental task given the fractured state of communication networks. Hayes reached out to surviving military units and civilian organizations, rallying support for the effort. Supplies were gathered, equipment transported, and teams assembled at key locations around the world. Everyone understood the risks involved, but no one hesitated. This was their last chance to set things right. On the day of activation, the team gathered at the Nevada base, their faces etched with fatigue but glowing with hope. Monroe stood at the controls, her hands steady despite the enormity of the moment. Daniel monitored the targeting parameters, ensuring accuracy down to the smallest detail. Laura kept watch over environmental readings, prepared to intervene if anything went wrong. Outside, the sky darkened as storms raged overhead, nature itself seeming to react to the impending event. Hayes addressed the group one final time, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "This is it," he said. "Whatever happens next, remember why we're here." With a deep breath, Monroe initiated the sequence. A low hum filled the room, growing louder until it vibrated through every surface. On the monitors, energy levels surged, pulsing outward in waves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the distortions began to fade, objects reappearing and memories returning. Across the globe, power grids flickered back to life, and people emerged from hiding, blinking in disbelief as the world stabilized around them. Cheers erupted in the control room, tears streaming down faces as the realization sank in. They had done it, yet the victory came with scars. Entire neighborhoods remained missing, erased forever by the initial pulse. Some people never recovered lost memories, living with gaps in their lives that could never be filled. The team bore the burden of knowing they had risked everything, succeeding only partially. Daniel often wondered if they had made the right choice, while Laura found solace in the resilience of those who endured. Monroe dedicated herself to studying the lingering effects, determined to prevent another catastrophe. Hayes retired from active duty, haunted by the lives lost, but proud of humanity's ability to rise above despair. In the aftermath, life slowly returned to a fragile semblance of normalcy. Cities rebuilt, communities healed, and stories of survival spread, offering hope for the future. Though the threat of the Vrexians was gone, whispers persisted of other civilizations watching from afar, intrigued or perhaps alarmed by humanity's bold act of self-preservation. As life moved forward, the survivors couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely postponed a reckoning with the cosmos. But for now, Earth remained safe, its place in the universe uncertain yet undeniably defiant. The world began to heal, though scars remained visible in every corner of the planet. In Chicago, Daniel Carter walked through streets that were slowly coming back to life. Shops reopened their doors and people ventured out cautiously, testing the fragile sense of safety. Yet reminders of the chaos lingered. Empty lots where buildings once stood, faded posters calling for missing persons who would never return, and the occasional flicker of a streetlight as if reality itself wasn't entirely sure it had stabilized. Daniel often found himself staring at these remnants, wondering if humanity truly understood the cost of its survival. He carried his phone everywhere, not because it worked anymore, but because it symbolized both the fragility and resilience of human connection. Laura Bennett returned to her work along the San Diego coastline, studying marine ecosystems that seemed to pulse with renewed energy. Dolphins played again in the waves, fish schools moved in familiar patterns, and plankton bloomed under the sun. Yet something felt different, as if nature itself had been altered on a fundamental level. Laura documented subtle changes in behavior, noting how some species adapted quickly while others struggled to recover. She couldn't shake the feeling that Earth was recalibrating after the shock of Project Eclipse, trying to find a new balance. At night, she sat by her window, gazing at the stars and wondering if they held answers or warnings for the future. Dr. Rachel Monroe dedicated herself to understanding the lingering effects of the quantum destabilization. Back at the Nevada base, she spent countless hours analyzing data from around the globe, piecing together fragments of information like a puzzle with missing pieces. Her research revealed that while the counterwave had stabilized most of Earth's electromagnetic field, small anomalies persisted. Objects occasionally vanished without warning, only to reappear moments later in strange locations. Memories continued to blur for some, leaving gaps in personal histories that could never be filled. Monroe feared these effects might worsen over time, potentially unraveling reality further. Still, she refused to give up, driven by the belief that science could offer solutions where uncertainty loomed. Colonel Ethan Hayes stepped away from active duty, retreating to a quiet cabin nestled in the mountains. Though physically removed from the chaos, he remained haunted by the faces of those who hadn't survived. He visited memorials whenever he could, standing silently before walls etched with names of soldiers and civilians alike. Each visit reminded him of humanity's sacrifices and its strength. Hayes often thought about the choices they had made during the crisis, questioning whether erasing an entire alien civilization had been justifiable. Yet when he looked at the survivors rebuilding their lives, he found solace in knowing that Earth endured despite overwhelming odds. Daniel and Laura stayed in touch, meeting regularly to share updates on their respective projects. Their conversations shifted over time, moving from technical discussions to reflections on what it meant to rebuild. Daniel spoke of his efforts to document the changes in urban environments, capturing images and stories of resilience. Laura shared her observations of nature's recovery, marveling at how ecosystems adapted even in the face of profound disruption. Together, they began compiling their findings into a single archive, hoping to preserve a record of humanity's struggle for future generations. They knew the lessons learned would shape the way people approached crises yet to come. Monroe joined their efforts, contributing scientific insights alongside emotional reflections. She wrote detailed reports on the mechanics of the Eclipse system, explaining both its successes and failures. Her goal was simple: ensure no one repeated the same mistakes. The team debated releasing the information publicly, fearing it might spark panic or misuse. Ultimately, they decided transparency was essential, trusting humanity to learn from its past. Copies of the archive were distributed to libraries, universities, and digital repositories worldwide, safeguarded against loss or corruption. As weeks turned into months, communities came together to honor the fallen and celebrate survival. Memorials sprang up in cities and towns, each unique yet united by themes of courage and defiance. People gathered to share stories, lighting candles in memory of loved ones lost during the invasion and its aftermath. These gatherings became acts of collective healing, binding strangers through shared grief and hope. For many, they served as reminders that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technology or weapons, but in its ability to endure and rebuild. Yet whispers of unease persisted. Astronomers reported unusual activity in deep space, faint signals resembling the quantum pulses emitted by the Vrexians. Some speculated these were remnants of the erased fleet, echoes trapped between dimensions. Others believed they belonged to other civilizations, watching Earth with caution or curiosity after witnessing its bold act of self-preservation. Governments formed alliances to monitor these developments, pooling resources to prepare for whatever might come next. Hayes kept close tabs on the situation, offering advice based on his experience leading the resistance. "We can't let our guard down," he warned. "If we do, history will repeat itself." Despite the lingering uncertainty, life carried on. Children laughed in playgrounds rebuilt from rubble, farmers tilled fields once scorched by alien weaponry, and artists painted murals depicting scenes of unity and triumph. Humanity embraced its imperfections, finding beauty in the cracks left behind by adversity. Daniel captured these moments in photographs, framing them alongside images of destruction, to show how far the world had come. Laura studied the resurgence of biodiversity, documenting how life thrived even in places scarred by war. Monroe continued her research, determined to unlock the secrets of the universe before another threat emerged. In the end, the survivors realized their victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that humanity could adapt, persevere, and grow stronger through hardship. The scars of Project Eclipse served as reminders of what had been lost, but also of what had been gained. A deeper understanding of resilience, community, and the interconnectedness of all things. As the sun set over a world forever changed, Daniel, Laura, Monroe, and Hayes looked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew one thing for certain. They would face it together, united by the unyielding spirit of a planet that refused to surrender.